these are two measurements that you need to be familiar with if you're a landlord leasing space or you're a tenant leasing space from a landlord. Hi, and welcome to Lasser, New York Real Estate. Today I'm going to be discussing the topic of rentable square feet versus usable square feet. And these are two measurements that you need to be familiar with if you're a landlord leasing space or you're a tenant leasing space from a landlord. Basically, the rentable square feet is a larger measurement, and it takes the dimensions of the space that you're leasing and also takes into account a pro rata share of the entire floor based on the size of the space you're leasing, and adds that to the rentable square foot calculation. So, for example, the hallways, pro rata portion of the hallways, the elevator and the bathroom would be included in the rentable square feet. The other measurement is the usable square feet. And usable square feet is what you would commonly think of as the space that you're renting. And if you're purchasing a home, it's the actual size of the space. So some tenants, I think, not usually landlords, but tenants are confused by this concept when they're leasing space. They don't understand that the dimensions of the space that they're renting are actually smaller than those that are presented to them, and that's standard in the New York commercial real estate business. And if you're just not familiar with commercial leasing, then if you're a tenant, you might be thrown off by the fact that the space that you actually rent is smaller than the rentable square feet that's quoted to you. And the difference between the rentable square feet and the usable square feet is called the loss factor. And if you had, for example, you were renting a 10,000 square foot space, and the rentable square feet was 10,000, and the usable square feet was 7,000. There'd be a 3,000 square foot difference, and that would be a loss factor of 30%, which would actually be pretty common in commercial leases in New York. So the important things to keep in mind if you're a landlord are that when you're renting space, you might have a broker making representations on behalf of you, the owner, and you want to make sure that any representations the broker makes regarding the size of the space are obviously accurate, but accurate, consistent, and that it's clear that we're talking about, any representations are talking about rentable square feet, not usable square feet. And also you want to make sure that in your lease you have what's called a merger clause. And the merger clause basically says that you're taking the space as is, and whatever representations were made prior to signing the lease, anything that's not embodied in the lease is not binding. And actually, this issue has been litigated many times in New York, where after a tenant signs a lease, they get buyer's remorse. They, for whatever reason, they're in financial distress, and they wake up one day and decide that the space that they rented, they're actually paying more for the space they rented than they think they should be, because they determined that the price per square foot that they thought they were paying is too high, not realizing that they're actually paying based on rentable square feet and not usable square feet. And the case law is pretty clear in this case. The courts have said that if you have a merger clause, that whatever representations were made by the landlord prior to signing the lease, those are not going to be factored into the court's decision. And in addition, the courts have said that it's incumbent upon a tenant to take measurements of the space before they sign a lease, if that's important to them. Now, in these cases, the tenants are making allegations of fraud, or they're seeking it's called the reformation of a lease, where you try to say that there was a mistake between the deal that was entered into between the parties. But In those instances, the courts have said, well, listen, tenant, you had the opportunity to measure the space. The landlord wasn't unclear on what they were renting to you. It was unclear. What was unclear to the tenant, not to the landlord. In those cases, the courts have uniformly ruled in the landlord's favor. Now, if you're a tenant renting space, what you need to keep in mind is that the rentable versus usable isn't that important, and the price per square foot isn't that important. What really matters to you as a tenant renting space is that A, that you can afford the space, and then B, that you've measured it. And you can get a test fit, an architect, or a furniture designer or a furniture supplier can do a test fit, and they can determine what furniture would fit in your space, how many offices you can fit in there, and the landlord can also help you with that, or like I said, you can hire your own architect. But the idea is that as long as a space can accommodate your needs, you shouldn't really worry, and you can afford it. You really shouldn't worry about the rentable and usable price per square foot, because it's really not the most accurate number. Hopefully you found this episode to be informative and entertaining. And if you did, please press the like and the subscribe buttons and leave your comments below so we can get your feedback. And if you have suggestions for future episodes, please leave those below as well. And remember to make every day great. Thank you.